Welcome to another Stanley Safaris Podcast. In today's episode, I speak to a good friend and mentor, Beks Ndlovu, founder and CEO of African Bush Camps. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Stanley Safaris Podcast, and thanks for joining us. Today, I'm very honored to introduce you to a very good friend of mine and a mentor of mine, Beks Ndlovu, founder and owner, CEO of African Bush Camps. Beks, thank you so much for joining me. I know how busy you are, and so your time is very precious, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Sean, what a pleasure to eventually get to have a chat to you. And I'm looking forward to this. And it's been a long time coming. So let's chat all things safaris.
Perfect. So as a bit of an intro, Beks and I go back to, I think it was about 2010, when I was working for a company in the UK, and we were looking at different products to add to our portfolio, and African Bush Camps was one of them. I came out to the camps in 2010 and remember meeting you on the shores of Lake Kariba after a little fun incident in Mana Pools. I remember having a drink with you there back then. And then when I moved back to Cape Town, I worked with you. I headed up the sales and marketing for African Bush Camps. And so Beks was always an inspiration to me and a mentor, and I've learned a lot. So it is an honor to talk to you, and thanks again.
Thanks very much, Sean.
So let's dive into your background. You are Zimbabwean. You grew up close to Wangi National Park, and you started your career out as a guide. I remember your story of you looking over the fence at these game drive vehicles driving past and people going to look at the wildlife, and you thinking, what on earth is going on here? So take us back to that moment and the journey to where you are today, because it's an incredible journey, and quite an exciting one.
Thanks. Yeah, Sean, I look at that journey and I look at where things are today, and obviously the inspiration, a lot of it came from the context of what did I see growing up as a child and what did it actually mean to me. And each time one of these kids in today's time see one of our game drive vehicles, these people bundled up in winter in the back of an open car or vehicle driving around, what are they doing? And what does that mean for local communities? What does that mean for this young child walking on the side of the road, walking 10 kilometers on his way to school barefoot, and possibly not having had a meal? And I try to contextualize that in today's world and look at how I grew up. And that's exactly what it was. There was such little connection between what we were seeing, what we were experiencing, and how that could possibly help or at least have an impact in our lives. And that's something that we've set out to change. It was only when I was probably about 17 years old, a year before I left high school, that I managed to be invited by friends older than myself that had left high school a year or two before I did, already started jobs in the guiding field. And I got invited in my school holidays to do an internship and get a little glimpse and a little window into the world of safaris. And that's really what transformed my thinking, and started thinking, actually, there's a different kind of learning that's going on here. Everybody's applying to go to universities, colleges, but there's a different kind of learning here that's possible. A learning that is not confined between four walls. A learning from nature, from a world of all possibilities, and not just concentrated on academics. And so by the time I was 18, I had a multiple of job offers as an intern because of my experience during the school holidays. And I dove really deep into trying to learn what the safari world was all about. And of course, really sort of learning how to have a servant mentality around serving people, but also serving communities and serving those around you. And that was an energizing 3 years of my life in the build-up of getting my guide's license, starting with my canoe guide's license, and then eventually my professional guide's license, which led me to guide throughout Zimbabwe within those first 5-6 years of my world as an employee.
Yeah. And so you were primarily based in Zimbabwe, moving around there, but you also got to guide outside of Zimbabwe, but you always came back to Zim. That was always your home.
That was always my home. I did get some insight during my spare travels to go and see Botswana, to go and see Namibia. And at that time, I felt Africa has got so much more to give, and I want to experience so much more.
Yeah.
And that's when Beks Safaris was born as an idea and a concept. And I would go overseas and market to friends who had been on safari, people that I'd met during the course of my career. And I would get these requests to curate a whole itinerary over a period of 10 to 2 weeks and lead that trip.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate in that I saw what I call the very best of what Africa has to show. But unfortunately, Sean, as we know, there's only certain aspects of the front of house that people see. And many people don't see what I call the injustices to the land, the people, and the wildlife. And it is that aspect of it that really challenged me to say, am I able to really have an impact in what I'm seeing, what is unfolding, being a man or a band of one? And that was for me the source of inspiration to want to make a difference and build a business that is of high impact, but also build a business with other ambassadors that are rallying for the same things that I'm very passionate about, the same things that I'm an ambassador of throughout Africa. Hence African Bush Camps in 2006.
Okay, so coming up for 20 years. Amazing.
We are 20 years old this year, and we're making sure that we can celebrate at every aspect and every touch points with our teams internally, our communities, and of course, all the people that have supported us along the journey. And there's no doubt that you'll join one of those celebrations during the course of the year.
I hope so. Yeah, it was a big part of my life. So yeah, absolutely looking forward to coming and celebrating with you for that milestone. So when you started African Bush Camps, Somalisa was the beginning. And I know that obviously the conservation and community aspect is a very big part. It's front and center of what you guys are doing. You started the African Bush Camps Foundation at the same time, and that just goes to show how important that is to you. And we'll chat about the impact shortly, but talk us through that initial first camp, Somalisa. I've stayed there from when it was the old camp right up to where it is today. Absolutely love it. It is one of my favorite camps in Africa. So talk us through that process of going, okay, I've guided all these amazing people around the incredible Africa. Let me put down some roots. Let me put down a tented camp, a permanent camp, and settle here. Where did you get that from, that inspiration?
Well, they always say if you want to start something and you want the support, you can get it from your people. You can get it from your family. And so Hwange National Park is a park which is just outside of the village that I was born in, Lupane. And for the formative years of my high school life, I grew up in Hwange Town, which is a small coal mining community, again, adjacent to the national park. So I speak the language. I felt the sense of culture and community there were very familiar for me. And in fact, that's where I got my first guiding job. And I spent most of my guiding years looking back in that area. So I knew it quite intimately and quite well. So that became the obvious place to plant my first seed in 2006. And, back then, obviously, we did everything ourselves. Got roped in the family to get involved with building, with furnishing, interiors, the whole lot. And those were fun times. But I always tell the story that people tell you about how wonderful it is to grow a beautiful garden. And if you do it properly, guaranteed you'll get all the bees, the birds, and the butterflies. They'll all flock in and everything will be beautiful. Well, I think my passion for Zimbabwe and for the area was so strong that I completely lost, or perhaps naively, I didn't quite have the common sense of financial terms, commercial terms, in a country like Zimbabwe in 2006 when Robert Mugabe was on a rage with the country, with the land invasions and the whole rhetoric around foreigners and internationals. And I can tell you that for the first, I would say for the first 4 or 5 years, those birds and the bees and the butterflies were not coming.
Yeah.
So it was important to recognize that as soon as I opened Somalisa, to the extent that I was already negotiating a concession in Botswana to open up the second camp. And it was that camp in 2007, the Nyanti Bush camp, that I opened. There was high bed demand in Botswana.
Yeah.
The camp did extremely well, that it actually helped finance the struggling child Somalisa in Zimbabwe, which today, 20 years later, is one of our flagships and really does extremely well. So very fortunate for that. But, that's what we needed to go through. But all along the way, we've been able to pull alongside the communities, starting with our people. Our people that come from those communities, we seek to employ very much locally first, and then extend out. I mean, the statistics around local employment and the impact that has to the communities that we serve is enormous. As you know, the rule of thumb is that for each tourism employee, there's a chance that they're supporting anything from 8 to 10 people. So if you do the maths, my first camp, all of a sudden at 24 people. After the Nyanti Bush camp, I had a team of about 50 people. And it's that togetherness that I was growing in order to have ambassadors who would really trumpet out our impact and advocate for our passions of building communities and conservation. And that felt like we were growing an army of people and advocates who would be able to rally for a cause, things that you and I both believe in, things that we've talked about in the past. And here we are 20 years later, 17 camps, 800 people deep. And I can honestly say you go to each and every one of those camps, the local component from the local villages surrounding come from the local area, working in that camp and giving us input as to how we can grow those communities and support them, how we can work in collaboration with them to create a better planet, not just for ourselves, but for future generations and for those that live very far away from us. And so, it is this that is very satisfying, that inspires me and helps me deal with all the stressful things that our industry deals with around travel. Travel, I think, is probably one of the most fickle industries, as you know. Somebody sneezes in China or in New York, and all of a sudden that's an issue for us in Zimbabwe, Botswana, Zambia. So I think for us, we're at a stage now where we feel less is more and really building a business with depth that hopefully can have some form of resilience to absorb some of these things, but also to make sure that we're really working and choosing people like yourselves and others in our industry who really partner with us and choose us because of the work that we're doing. And people's contributions, your clients' contributions by traveling with us are actually part of our conservation story. And for a very long time, a lot of us businesses, even I included, we're going at fast pace to build these businesses and also doing the work at the same time. But it was more of us taking care of the work. Whereas today, we really feel that our placement and where we are in our calling is to take everybody with us on our journey. So it's not only just our staff, ourselves, and our communities. It's our trade partners like yourself. It's your clients that you send to us. It's the whole collective that will make a fundamental difference to our planet and particularly to the African landscape. Yeah,
very true, very true. So we've touched on the conservation community aspect, and it was said, hugely important to you, and you started the African Bush Camps Foundation at the same time that you started African Bush Camps, and even though the camps were struggling, you still felt that the foundation element was an important part, and it really is. You do incredible work across all 3 countries that you operate in. Talk us through some of the projects and, where the money that our guests are spending to come and stay with you, where is that filtering through into the local communities? What are some of the bigger projects that African Bush Camps Foundation is working on?
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, so I mean, just to sort of frame our work, the frame of our work is really around this concept that we've created called a theory of change, which really is about connected landscapes and thriving communities. And what we mean by that, if you look at the Africa map, there's all of these landscapes which were once very fully connected and functional, healthy systems with lots of biodiversity.
Yeah.
And with increase in human population, these have all been chopped, cut up, degraded, barriers, fences that have actually stopped that connected landscape theory. And so where we are interested in operating in is in areas where we can connect those landscapes, where we can have influence on how that is done. And during that process, make sure that the local communities are coming along the journey so that they can thrive within those landscapes together with wildlife. Because if you look at Africa throughout, the notion through colonization and various other terrible things that have happened throughout this continent is that there's been this division where the theory is that human beings live here, wildlife lives here. And what we're saying, that has not always been the case. Man and wildlife have always lived in an integrated way harmoniously, and that is how we sustained ourselves. That's how we sustained the landscapes and the wildlife. So, I mean, the projects throughout are quite diverse, and there are some very interesting entrepreneurial projects that I am particularly very excited about. But I think what we're seeing more than anything else is the issue of human-wildlife coexistence, which is something that has troubled me for years. And an example of a project...
before you get into that, I mean, I remember one of the stories you told me a few times was you as a child having elephants coming in, raiding your crops, and then you ending up tracking the family or the herd for several miles, and then realizing, oh, where am I? And tell us a little bit about that, because it has context in terms of what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So, I mean, so my language is Ndebele. That's where I come from. And it's in Ndebele as a tribe. We're an offshoot of the Zulu clan that came from the deep south and then went up north, settled in Zimbabwe. And the name that we use for wildlife is Nyamazan. And Nyamazan, the literal translation is meat on hoofs. So you know, this is the context in which you grow up with, and this is the context with millions of kids and people grow up with in this rural context.
Yeah.
But also, just like we had elephants raid, our crops during a drought year, and I mean, my mother was devastated with the devastation of banana trees, our vegetables, our corn, all of that. But now you can imagine how a family that lives off the land has waited for 12 months to plant their crops into the ground. And just before harvest, a herd of elephants comes and cleans out the entire field, leaving them with nothing for the whole year, which, by the way, that is their harvest that keeps them going for the entire year.
Yeah.
And any excess they use to trade to get other stuff that they particularly don't have or can't grow. So, my fascination as a kid was actually purely like, this is incredible, these animals. The fact that my family was greatly disturbed by the raid, I was curious, I had a curious mind. And naturally, I suppose, I realized that I did have some tracking skills from growing up in the rural area, going to try and retrieve cattle or donkeys or whatever it was. So, I did follow this herd of elephants for an entire morning until I realized that perhaps I had come a lot closer than I should have been in the middle of nowhere, and that almost cost me my life.
How old were you?
I must have been about, I reckon, 9-10 years old, thereabouts.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, that could have been one of those tragic stories that you read about today. Boy gets crushed by elephants out in the rural areas. I mean, that could have been me. You would have never heard of Beks Ndlovu, and this is not an uncommon story, but I was one of the lucky ones that lived to survive it and get to live a life where I look back at that story and look at what's happening in our rural community and saying, how can we positively change the mindset of people that when they see a herd of elephants, they actually are seeing what it can provide for them as a result of impact of tourism, whether it's employment or giving them an opportunity to start a business, giving them solutions to live harmoniously with wildlife. So one of the projects that I always speak about, Sean, is our Boma project, which we started off in Wanga National Park, and we now do that in Kariba and Bumi. We've now started doing that in the Chobe Enclave in Botswana, where we provide a family with what we call a mobile boma. And a boma is an enclosure, but instead of the communities going out and cutting these 80 to 100-year-old indigenous trees and planting them in the ground to build like a lager type effect to keep their cattle at night safe from lions and hyenas, we rather use canvas or some kind of PVC that you can move around. And the concept is that when predators come at night, such as lions, through the logs, they can see the cattle and they jump over. And in one night, they can slaughter the entire herd because of the chaos, lions hunting instincts. Whereas using this canvas for the family, they can bring their cattle, their livestock in at night. The lion can't see through it. It's tall enough that the lion cannot jump through and will not risk that. And the families that have used this system of enclosure have not lost any of their livestock to wildlife.
Amazing.
In the last 12 years, 15 years that we've employed that. And so that's been very, very successful. But figure this out. These are moving bomas, right? So it's planted in a field where they normally grow their crops.
Yeah.
That ground at night gets disturbed by the hooves of the cattle. So the ground is moved around and aerated, but also the droppings or the dung from the cattle fertilizes the ground.
Yeah.
And when you move it around during the dry season, when there's not cropping, the entire field the soil is enriched. As a result, the families are also seeing a yield of up to 10 times on those that are not participating in that.
Sure.
So we've been able to organize health programs around their cattle because then they're being looked after. We've got a health specialist who will come in and help them with the health of their livestock. These stories and these transformations, those people know that this is a result of the tourism economy around the areas that they operate in. So all of a sudden, they're saying, my brother, my uncle, my dad is employed by this safari camp, and this safari camp can only attract visitors if they can see the wildlife. The wildlife can only survive if they've got something to eat, if they've got trees, if they've got grass. So what is our part in this to make sure that this whole ecosystem and tourism economy continues to prevail? Literally where we are seeing in some of these communities, women that have come together and formed these businesses where 15 years ago, they were barely able to feed themselves.
Yeah.
And today, they not only feed themselves, but they feed their children. They look after other orphans from the greater part of the community. And they're actually reclaiming their place in these societies as the matriarch, which is what happens in these communities. This is how communities survive in the old times, that they would have a matriarch, as we see in wildlife through elephants. This is complete biomimicry that we see here, that they're able to reclaim their dignity as the matriarchs of these communities and have these healthy communities that can sustain themselves. And for us, that's what our business is about. That's our calling to our purpose.
And that is important, that there's a long-term goal and long-term project there for these people. They generating their own income as opposed to relying on handouts from tourists coming through. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. A lot of people ask, what can we bring? What can we bring? And maybe school books and things like that is great, but having their own projects and generating their own income is even more important for long-term sustainability. Fantastic. Great.
Yeah.
And how often, I know you travel a lot, how often are you getting out into the camps and going and seeing these places and spending out there?
Yeah, so Sean, I've just come back yesterday evening from Zambia, from Thorntree River Lodge. And for me, it's very important to always go and obviously see the performance of the camps, connect with our people in the camps, but also to get a sense from our guests how they feel about the current place they're staying in. Quite often, the guests that I meet there have been to one of our other camps. It gives me, that full opportunity to be able to engage with our guests and understand how we're doing, how are people doing. But more than that, gives me somewhat an opportunity to be able to touch base, connect, and also observe what is happening in our surrounding communities. How big is our impact? Talk to our guides and our local staff. Ask the right questions. Where are we with this project? Where are we with these people? And particularly in Thorntree, we've got an exciting project there that we're collaborating with some of our industry partners in transforming an entire village from health to education, to building businesses, farm to table, irrigation to grow crops to sell to supermarkets. So there's all of a sudden this whole trade cycle that's happening. And one of our biggest objectives, other than uplifting the lives of that community, is to see how we can really help stop the cutting down and the deforestation of vast tracts of land in Zambia, which is quite a common thing where people go down and chop trees and create charcoal, which they sell as a source of energy.
Yeah.
And the fact that these communities are beginning to understand why this land needs to stay intact is we need the biodiversity, we need the wildlife to still be attracted, we need to be able to have a tourism economy which can only survive through these places that are left intact. So, it's not just us going in there and saying we need to stop doing this. It's giving people a reason why to stop, and then giving people an alternative form of income and an interaction with tourism economies that is healthy without having false economies.
Yeah. And talk us through the guiding side of African bush camps. You were a guide, and renowned as one of the best in Africa.
You can't say I was. It's a lifetime career. I'm still a guide.
Okay. You still are one of the best in Africa.
Thanks for that compliment. It's so funny because when I go into the camps, I remember the last story going to a camp with some old guests of mine. And I actually took them out for a Zim. I took them out for a game drive. We're guiding, and my family was arriving that afternoon. My kids arrived, and the guests and my kids were interacting. And my kids say to them, "So, who was your guide?" And the guest said, "Well, your dad was our guide." And my kids said, "No. Who was your real guide?" So I don't blame you. I get that a lot. I'm no longer seen as guides. Look, I mean, I loved my guiding career. I don't guide as much anymore. And we've got phenomenal, excellent guides within the camps. And that is a core, I think, differentiator for us. We have this concept that we call be guided by the best. And we now have elevated that experience, not only to our guides, as in safari guides, but our hosts, our consultants, from the time people inquire to book that safari, is that we're in this fortunate position to guide people to a point in order to make sure that they get the ultimate safari experience. But definitely the safari component, the safari guide, we believe that is the difference between a good safari and an exceptional experience.
100%.
And that's a key focus for us. And today I get involved in opening and conducting a lot of the guides training in all three countries. We've got a team now of over 80 guides throughout 3 countries, with something like over, I think the last number I got is like over close to 500 years of guiding knowledge and experience between all of us.
Yeah.
So but I mean, this is a career that we believe should never be let to die. And as long as we've got a wildlife product, then this is a career that we should all be promoting for future generations. So that's why we also have these junior ranger programs that we put in place, expose the kids, actually take them from the communities into our camps, take them on game drives, take them to experience what it's like to be in a safari camp from a very early age.
Yeah,
which is certainly not an opportunity that I had when I was young. So being able to make sure that we identify some of these voids and these key factors that change people's thinking, it's really a great honor and a privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah. So I was going to ask in terms of what are you doing in terms of local communities and seeing guiding as a premier career going forward? So you're bringing young kids from the camps and from the local communities into the camp, getting to experience what a safari is all about. And how many of those are you seeing kind of filtering through into taking up guiding and getting jobs in the tourism industry?
Yeah, I mean, our hope obviously is that we'll see a lot more of that in the future. I think it's too early at this point to tell. We've had the junior ranger programs going over the last 5 years, and we're talking about, junior school kids between the ages of 6 and 15. I think this for us is about how do we start to plant seed that will transform people's thinking in the future.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And whilst the best time for us to start junior ranger programs was 20 years ago when we first started, well, the best time today is today.
Correct.
And we will be able to see those benefits. Our children will be able to see those benefits in 10, 20 years' time.
Yeah.
But, even further than that, as you know, Sean, we've started all these programs like the Female Guide program. We'll be giving females an opportunity to be able to get into guiding. Previously it was a very male-dominated society and career where even if females within a village wanted those opportunities were really open for their male counterparts. And we want to make sure that we can also expose and make sure that there's equality, equal opportunities for everyone. It's all of these small things that alone looked at might seem quite minor, but in the end have got a bigger effect on people's thinking and people's passion.
Yep. Amazing. And so how many camps have you got now? I'm losing track.
We have 17 camps at the moment. And there's a thing that we've started doing over the last sort of 12 months, over the last year, is phasing out a certain type of camp within our portfolio. And we definitely feel that it's better to do less, but to go deeper in them. We can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Some of our expedition range of camps, as opposed to Signature and Icon, we felt that whilst they were very soulful and they were the heart of the business, that's the very fabric that we started from. And they were popular camps, but from a commercial point of view, they were really not bringing back the reward, first of all, to the employees. That was commensurate to the amount of energy and passion they put in. And those camps were also not bringing us as a business the commercial financial reward in order for us to actually, A, fulfill our purpose of conservation and community, B, make sure that the product is kept in good shape and reinvested in, and C, to bring a dividend to people that have put forward those resources, which is good stewardship. Our big word for this year as an organization, by the way, is stewardship. And it really speaks more into, if we have a certain amount of resources and influence, what is it that we can do to optimize and make sure that we get the best out of it so that we can actually be good stewards of these unique resources that we have. And so it's also an exciting stage. So we have 17, we might shrink that to 15 by the end of this year, but ultimately we'll start to rebuild that again by building the Signature and the Icon brand into who we are.
Okay, so that's the vision. That's where African Bush Camps is heading, is in that direction. And other properties, other areas that you're looking at expanding into. Is there anything on the horizon there?
So Sean, it's not into new areas per se, but doing what we do better in the current camps and making sure that those camps are well defined in their offering. But we probably have about another. We're currently in the throes of building Linyanti Icon, which is called Linyanti Lehodima in the Linyanti. And with that, we'll also redo Linyanti Ebony and Linyanti Bush Camp. But we do have a site in the Delta that we're looking at pressing the button on probably towards the end of this year.
Amazing.
And then in Zambia, we have managed to get an extra 500 meters of river shoreline next to Thorntree, where we'll be expanding and creating a Thorntree wellness product.
Okay.
Wow. At Bumi, we're also improving the offering there and adding a wellness component. I think there's a missed opportunity in the safari space for wellness.
Yeah.
People come from overseas and we work them to the bone. By the time they go back home, people are exhausted from their safaris. So there's definitely an argument to be said about making sure that when people come, it's also a reset and a review on people's sense of wellness and a sense of well-being. And being in nature, and particularly being in the bush, is the best signal for the body to receive a lot of the reset and actually healing and wellness.
Yeah.
So we are taking the wellness growth quite seriously. And that, I think, is more the direction that we're going in, introducing that component into our safaris.
Okay. So over the last 20 years, there's been a huge change from when you started to where you are now. Where do you see the next 20 years within the safari industry? Where do you see that going?
Thanks, Sean, I think it's difficult, to project 20 years. But obviously, if I died and went to heaven, what would I see as what do I want to see as in Africa? I want to be able to see these integrated landscapes where the wildlife is such a valuable source of existence for human beings and is recognized as that. And that people are fighting passionately to make sure that the harmonization of our landscapes and man's quest for development and growth in other sectors does not come obviously at a ruin. So what do I see for the tourism industry? Perhaps minefields that have been left barren, that have been left dug up, whether it's coal mines or whatever source of mining that has scarred the earth's tremendously in some of these outlying wilderness areas, seeing those areas restored where people are being paid for services where they are growing trees. I went to a tree planting festival this weekend and I got a little bit of a taste of that just outside of Cape Town, where people are so vested in regenerating earth as a major priority, as their major sort of life's quest, because it literally means survival of mankind.
Yeah.
What do I see, or what do I want to see in terms of the average tourist and the average company or business in this industry? I think more engaging and having that more at the front of mind as an offering and as part of the experience as to why people should come to Africa, because they're part of the regeneration of this planet.
Yeah.
I think the day that those conversations are had up front with people, the more that we can have a greater impact, because by the time people get here, they are really primed to have the conversations, to get their hands dirty, get involved in some of these. And it's only then that people will say, how can I help? How can I be a part of this? And we need the participation of the entire industry, the entire planet, in what we're doing. And these issues, by the way, are not just Africa problems, they're global problems. So that's the context in which we should view these. And, for me, in 20 years' time, hopefully these sentiments are not, opt-in, opt-out type scenarios, but a must with great will.
Yeah, true. Excellent. And closing remark, 17 camps, which is your favorite?
Okay.
Favorite child?
Favorite child. So, Sean, I tell you what, I don't have a favorite child, but what I do have is a favorite area. As you know, each of these children are very unique in their design, in their stories, and in their expression, if I can call it that.
Yeah.
But an area that I've always found truly special that I get to and my heart just melts for is the Lower Zambezi. Whether it's on the Zimbabwe side or Zambian side, being along that iconic river in the floodplains of monopools with wildlife scattered throughout the floodplain, call of a fish eagle, grunt of a hippo further downstream. To me, that's safari magic right there.
Yep, I agree. It is a very, very special place. That light filtering through the winter thorns, the escarpment, and some incredible wildlife that is fairly used to seeing people on foot. I love walking safaris. I know you do as well. And the ability to be able to get out and walk in amongst those forests and get to see the big game on foot is very special. So nice. Very cool. Perfect. Well, Beks, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for looking after our guests when they're in camp. I know it's not you personally, but you've obviously filtered that passion down through to all the teams. Having worked with you for 6 years, having gone through all of the camps several times, I know the passion is there. I know the guides, and still to this day, you have some of the top guides in Africa working at the camps. I remember going through to Somalisa, and no matter how many times I went there, I was being taught new things all the time. And I've been fortunate enough to go on safari my whole life, and having that privilege of being guided by those guys and learning new things is phenomenal. So yeah, hats off to you. Well done. I know it's been a long journey. It's been an incredible journey. I feel fortunate to have been part of that as well, and looking forward to the next 20 years.
Thank you very much, Sean. And I want to thank you especially for your journey with us, and for continuing supporting not only us, but also supporting Africa and the work that you do. The fact that you're a big advocate of the impact work that we do speaks quite a lot. And for me, part of my drive and passion for the future is to work with industry and trade partners like you, who understand what the things that really matter, the things that are meaningful for us, that we do, where we have this shared passion, shared vision, and shared purpose. So thank you to you and your growing team. Continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
I learned so much from Beks working at African bush camps, and I really enjoyed talking to him now and hearing more about his story, and I hope you did as well. In the next episode, I speak to Chris Roche, one of the founders of Wild Expeditions.